morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome back to Well That's Awkward.
Yes, it's me, Matt DW, the self-proclaimed expert in everything. So today we're going to be discussing Pixar films in the most imaginative way possible. Yes, that's right, we're doing a tier list. So, for anyone who doesn't know how a tier list works, I'm going to tell you all about it right now. Let's jump right into the video. Right, so there's going to be 5 tiers. Bottom tier is called the Cars 2 tier. We'll get onto that in a bit. Then we've got the subpar tier, which means the film's not as good as most of Pixar's normal films. Then we've got the standard Pixar film, which means they hit the high standards that they have. Then we have the underrated tier, which offer films that are very good and get more hate than they deserve. And then at the top we've got the GOAT tier, which means they're the greatest of all time. Okay, let's kick right off. First film Pixar ever made is Toy Story. Toy Story, amazing film, great characters, I love it. So, for the purposes of this video, we're going to be ranking the Pixar films against Toy Story, because Toy Story was their first film, so that's what's going to set the standard of Pixar. So it's a very high standard to live up to, but I'm sure they can do it. So we'll slap Toy Story right into the standard Pixar tier to kick things off. So next up we have A Bug's Life. Now I thought this was a really good film, but it gets so much hate. I think it's because it's quite forgettable, as you'll find with some of these Pixar films. When you're mixed in among loads of great films, sometimes you can get lost in the crowd. But personally, I really enjoy it. I think it's a good story, and we meet some great characters and some good music. So I'm going to have to put it into the underrated tier. Now, I know that's an unpopular opinion, but if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. Next up, we have Toy Story 2. In my opinion, not as good as the first one, but still a very good film. So that's why I'm going to have to stick it right next to Toy Story for now in the standard Pixar tier. Next up, we have Monsters, Inc. Now, I didn't watch this all the time growing up, but I still know it's a great film. It's got some great characters, and just the idea of it is amazing. I love the relationship between Boo and Sully. I think that's really sweet. And Mike, you're a legend. Mike is an icon, okay everyone? Mike is an icon. Hashtag Mike is an icon. We want to see that trending. So, Monsters Inc. It's right, standard Pixar, so it's going to go slap bang in the standard Pixar tier. Next up, we have Finding Nemo. I love Finding Nemo. It's sad, it's funny. Crush. We love Crush. Hashtag Christian icon. Let's see if we can get that trending as well. And then we've got the Marlin and Dory. The relationships are good, and then they go and meet Bruce.
I forgot to say when recording that it's going into the GOAT tier.
Next up, we have The Incredibles. Now, I know this is another unpopular opinion, but I'm not a fan of superhero movies. It's just in general, I don't really like them. But Incredibles is probably my favourite superhero movie. So I think it's very good. You can see this family and they're all super and they've all got different powers, and I just wish that could be real. Yeah, I just think it's a good film, so I'm going to stick it in the standard Pixar tier with the rest of them. Next up we have Cars. I loved Cars when I was a kid. Looking back at it now, it's probably not as good as I thought it was, but it has that nostalgia for me. And I think it gets some hate. People say it's boring, they don't like it. But I think they're just thinking about the sequels, which we'll get onto later. So I'm going to have to put Cars into the underrated tier. Okay, moving on to Ratatouille. Now, Ratatouille, such a good film. A rat that can cook. Who wouldn't love that? It's now even getting its own TikTok musical. I'll insert a clip now. We praise you, oh Ratatouille. You always reign supreme because of you. Who couldn't rate turned into a TikTok musical. Now maybe I'm being a bit biased because I love musicals. Don't love TikTok so much, but we'll get into that in a later video. I love the film, I love cooking, anyone can cook. It's such a great message. It's a great film, and it's gonna have to go right up in the GOAT tier with Finding Nemo. Next up we have Wally. Now, I'm not a fan of Wally, I'm not gonna lie. It's just slow. It takes some time to get going, and it's not for me. But it's a very good piece of cinematic work, and I think Wally as a character, he's lovable. But it's the lack of talking for me, just bored me a bit, which is gonna be why I'm gonna have to put it into the subpar tier. First one in there, but it's still a good film, just not up to the standard in my opinion. Then we have Up. Now, not many films get you crying in the first 10 minutes like Up does. I don't know what else there is to say. It's a really good film, it's really emotional, it's got some great characters, it's a great story, it's got a great villain, you know? I'm looking for these great villains. So, for me, I've got no choice except to stick it into the GOAT tier, up with some of the greatest Pixar films. Next up, Toy Story 3. My personal favourite Toy Story film. Toy Story 3 came out when I was quite young, so it's beginning to get nostalgia. It's beginning to be very nostalgic for me, and I really like the Lotso story. You know, the twist villain. It's quite a new thing that you haven't really seen before, and Pixar now love to do a twist villain. I think it gets some hate. People can say Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2, they're great, and then you get to Toy Story 3 and then it just kind of dies off a bit. I don't think so. I think it keeps up the momentum a lot. I think it keeps it pushing forward towards the fourth one, which we'll get to later on. So for me, it is going to go in the underrated tier, as it is my favourite Toy Story movie. Next we have Cars 2, that's going in the bottom tier. So we're going to move on to Brave now. So this is Pixar's attempt at a princess film. I'd leave it to Disney Pixar. I'm really sorry, I did not enjoy Brave much. It was just a bit dull. It kind of went on. I see why it's important with Boo becoming a witch, you know, the whole Pixar timeline, if you're familiar with that. I'm going to have to stick it into the subpar tier. Next up, we have Monsters University, the Monsters Inc. prequel. This gets too much hate. Hashtag no hate for Monsters University. It is great. In my opinion, better than the original, which I know is going to be unpopular. So, for that reason, me liking it being unpopular means it has to go into the underrated tier. Next up, we have Inside Out. Now, as I said, I don't cry at many films. I'm not really a crier. I choked up watching Inside Out. I mean, the story, it was such a good story. It was very relatable to me because when it came out, Riley was about my age, and it just really resonated with me watching it for the first time. And then the more I watch it, the more I pick up on it. Got Bing Bong, who's a legend. Hashtag Bing Bong the icon. Let's get that trend in as well. You know, if I say who's your friend that likes to play, if you didn't just go Bing Bong, I will find you and I will hurt you. Anyway, moving on. It's such a good film and it has to go into the GOAT tier for me. I'm sorry, it just does. Next up, we have The Good Dinosaur. The thing that separates our timeline from the Pixar timeline, the meteorite missing the Earth, not wiping out all the dinosaurs. The film on its own, though, it's a bit naff. Unfortunately, it's going to have to go into the subpar tier. It's not great. Ain't terrible. Moving on to Finding Dory, the long-anticipated sequel to Finding Nemo. Now, as you know, I stuck Finding Nemo up into the GOAT tier. I won't be doing the same with Finding Dory. It just didn't hit it for me. I just found it quite boring. I didn't like the angle that it went on. I'm not a fan, I'm sorry. So for me, it's going to have to go into the subpar tier because it's just not at the standard that you expect from Pixar. I don't expect to be getting bored by a Pixar film. Next up we have Cars 3, which in my opinion completely makes up for Cars 2. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to have to stick it into subpar because it's not up to that Pixar standard, but I'd like it on record that I really enjoyed the film. Next up, Coco. A masterpiece, some may say. For me, not really. It just wasn't a story that I got much invested in. It was quite hard to relate to. It was a good film. I understand why it gets all the praise it gets. So it is going to go into your standard Pixar tier, but near the bottom end because it wasn't for me. Next up we have Incredibles 2. The only one on the list that I have not seen. Apparently it's good. Some people say it lives up to the original. Some say it's maybe even better. Some say it's worse. Very mixed views on it, but everyone that's seen it said it does live up to the Pixar standard, so that is where it's going to go in my tier list. Okay, now we have Toy Story 4, the ending to the Toy Story trilogy, which I didn't like. If you just cut out the last 10 minutes, I'd have thought, yes, I would watch that cinema and gone, I really enjoyed that. I was just disappointed because this was the end of the Toy Story franchise that I'd grown up with and I loved. And it just didn't work for me. I know so many people think it's the perfect ending. I know people are going to hate me for saying I didn't like it, but I didn't like it. It's my opinion, unfortunately, and this is an opinionated video.
So once again, I forgot to say that it's going to go into the subpar tier.
However, I do think they're going to have a chance to redeem themselves because Lightyear is coming out in 2022, I think, and I am so excited to see this one because Buzz Lightyear is one of my favourite characters and I can't wait to see his origin story, the real person that the TV show was based on, that then toys were made from, which is the Buzz Lightyear that we know, and it's a spin-off. You know, I'm really excited, and if it lives up to the standard, then it could possibly be my favourite Pixar film of all time. But we will have to see. Next up, Onward. Now, Onward, I thought it was a good film. It was very different. It wasn't set on Earth that mainly the Pixar films are set on. So it was very different for me, and I didn't really enjoy it as much as I'd enjoy other Pixar films. So unfortunately for me, it didn't really hit the mark. But it was a really good story, it was magic, it was funny, the cast was great, Tom Holland, Chris Pratt, you know, they were good. So I'm going to stick it in the standard Pixar tier because I think it's just as good as many of the films that are in there, but it's not as good as it could have been. Finally, we have Soul. Now, I would want to stick Soul on the GOAT tier, but it's not been out that long, so it's not got the nostalgia for me that most of the films up there do have. So for me, it can't go up there, and it's not underrated because everyone's raving about it. It's just going to go in the standard Pixar tier, just underneath Toy Story, so second place in that tier. I've got to mention, in the tiers, they're going to be ranked by favourite to least favourite in that tier. And so yeah, and if give it 10 years, probably Soul's going to be in that GOAT tier. And it could be my favourite, depending on how good Lightyear is, or the other films that are coming out. But for now, it's going to go into the standard Pixar tier. So, this is my finished tier list. It should be up on your screen now. I don't know where it will be. It might be here, might be here, might be here, might be here covering my face. Probably good. You would enjoy that, wouldn't you? So, let me know in the comments how you would have done it. What's your favourite Pixar film of all time? What's your least favourite? If it's not Cars 2, take a long, hard look at yourself because it was bad. Anyway, so thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell so you know when I upload. So that's all from me. I'll see you next time. Au revoir. Auf Wiedersehen. Adios.